You're listening to Power Athlete Radio, a podcast dedicated to empowering your performance every damn day. Join former NFL pro and Power Athlete founder John Welborn as he dissects the greatest minds in strength, conditioning, and more. Joining him is everyone's favorite coach and hair model, Chris, aka Tex McQuilkin, Power Athlete's Director of Performance. So whether your goal is to be the hammer, destroy mediocrity, or simply move the dirt, you've come to the right place. Now with the warm-up done, let the gains begin.
Welcome to another episode of Power Athlete Radio. We have a fun one in store for you today. We are exploring the origins of one of Power Athlete's kick-ass taglines, mottos, trademarks, Eat the Week. So this dates back to, I first witnessed this when I attended and competed in Occupy Strength when Power Athlete was putting on training competitions, combine-esque experiences, and I brought my whole crew, including Callie, Coach Callie, to an event with a theme, Occupy Strength.
Where was this?
And Eat the Week. We attended Baltimore.
Baltimore. Okay.
Yes. So it was an awesome experience all around.
I don't think I was there, was I?
Negative. It was Mr. Luke Summers. That's when one fateful morning met Luke for the first time, and then his teammate, his PIC, Bo Orlando, excuse me.
So I was right in the middle of the baby throws. So my kids were born October of 2011. And so there was a huge chunk in there. Obviously, we had twins where I just missed time and wasn't involved. So we needed to do an event. We wanted to do something. People have been asking us to do combines. At the time, we had Occupy Wall Street was all over the media, and we decided just to play upon the name and do Occupy Strength.
Mm-hmm. And within that, there was a theme of Occupy Strength, and on the T-shirt, the front, Eat the Week. Mm-hmm. And since then, this has evolved and grown into, and I'll read it here, Eat the Week, not a call for cannibalism, but a mindset to dominate. Total domination, not only in your competitors, but of yourself. No one said it'd be easy. Conflict crafts character. Devour weakness, doubt, fear, and feeble excuses. Consume them before they consume you. Eat the Week. Mm-hmm. So take us back. Occupy Wall Street.
Well, what's the origin story you heard, and then I'll give you the truth.
So the essential, this moment, this Occupy Strength is when I was able to connect with Luke, and you had this call out to the world looking for expanded coaching staff, as you explained. At that time, you were in the throes of the twins, and Callie and I, who were running the gym in DC, we both applied. So y'all were looking for two people. Both of us applied, and this was our essential introduction so you could put names to the faces on our applications, which then led to an interview. Successful interview, Callie goes out to Cali, and then I'm on the East Coast, and there's East Coast opportunities. It was New Hampshire, Miami, or Corals Gables. So there was some East Coast that I got the opportunity to travel to, and that's where I heard the stories. And then there was an event in Miami involving a couple bath salts and a man that attacked another man and ate his face.
Yeah.
So part of the origin story that I heard, this might have been I think it was the Virginia Beach seminar that I helped out with, or one of
the bath salt is what started I don't know if you saw that we did a t-shirt. So the most expensive t-shirt we've ever done, I did the graphic design for, which was a hand coming out of like a crypt. Uh-huh. And it was the What Are You Training For Halloween shirt, which was based upon the zombie apocalypse bath salt eating face Florida person.
Yeah. So part of the origin that I interpreted in 2012 hanging out with the crew was the person trying to attack the other person and eat their face, like Eat the Week.
No, that is 100% conjecture and not true, and not the origin story that you were that really had this play into. Do you want to hear the truth?
Let's hit it.
Okay. So we wanted to do Occupy Strength based off of the Occupy Wall Street, Occupy Strength. There was this idea that, if strength is a platform, we're going to occupy it. We're going to build upon a contest for it. As we were doing the branding piece, Harry when I pitched him this idea, said, you need a tagline. So couldn't think of anything cool. I was by myself in Little Power Athlete at the time, or actually that was before we started Little Power Athlete. So I would have been in CrossFit Balboa, and I went there to go hide, which is what I would do. If I had free time, I would go to Balboa, I'd hide in my office, try to get all my work done, because obviously we were in the throes of the baby deal. And I went in to go work out, and on my playlist, obviously I'm a big Motorhead fan, Lemmy's Eat the Rich comes up. And as I'm jamming to Eat the Rich from Lemmy, I somehow left there, and after that workout came back, and when I sat down, I started looking for kind of like Eat the Rich, and ended up with Eat the Weak. And it was more this idea of, man, I have no idea. Actually, I can't even really tell you how that came into my mind, but it wasn't the idea of like, we're going to eat the weak people, whatever. I think it came down to the fact that there was a lot of weakness that we were observing. Obviously the opposite of strong is weak, occupy strength, eat the weak. And I felt that they played well together. So this is when I was still designing t-shirts.
And that there was a shirt before for the event that sold out.
Actually, this is before Harry Heppenstall. I think this might be pre-Harry Heppenstall. So I think as we were putting on the Eat the Week thing, we needed a tagline. I don't know why I threw Harry's name in there.
The tagline before, so the Baltimore one, I know it wasn't the first one. I'm not sure what number, how it ranked, but there was a tagline before on a shirt that says, "Don't have heroes," and the Occupy Strength.
Yeah, this
was numero dos.
So the Don't Have Heroes one actually comes from my first meeting with Jim Wendler. And so I meet Jim when we're out at Westside. We go to dinner, and we were sitting out there. I remember we were sitting at the bar, and Nate Austin was with us. And Nate was talking about all of his strength training heroes. And I think Wendler was like, we were talking about something. And he made just an off-the-cuff comment to Nate, which is like, dude, the reason that, in typical Jim Wendler style, which, we've seen the kinder, gentler, not nearly as abrasive Jim Wendler we got to see years later, but Jim back in the day was pretty fucking abrasive. And I think he laughed at him and scoffed at Nate and said, hey, the reason you're never going to amount to shit is you have fucking too many heroes. And I was telling him a story about, growing up playing football and, not necessarily like looking up to anybody. And I think it was just kind of an interesting thing where he's like, I think, people that have heroes are continuously disappointed. If once you're disappointed in your heroes, it's a negative thing. If you don't have heroes, you kind of go on. And so the Don't Have Heroes one also was a swipe at a little bit of the CrossFit stuff, where everywhere like we would go, people would be like, so-and-so's my hero. And it just got to the point. It's kind of like on Instagram, you see people like post a shirtless picture, and all these dipshits will be like, goals, body goals.
I don't know who you're following, but my answer to that is no.
I see it. People post that shit, and it's like this weird thing that somehow like, this picture you have is their goal. That's goals. I thought it was stupid.
I did post one shirtless pic, and then it was turned into an Adam Levine meme on Power Athlete.
Oh, so I believe
never again.
There's many memes that you're associated with that should be out there, but where it comes from was
it's on your hard drive.
I don't worry. I got hundreds of memes for you. Came from that deal with Jim Wendler when we just kind of sat down. We were sitting at a bar. I always remember it because he ordered a glass ice with some Jim Beam in it, and then pulled out his own energy drink and cracked it. And he's like, they don't have the Monster I like. And I was like, fuck it, I don't come to this restaurant. So through this conversation, it was this like, hey, don't have heroes. And the CrossFit hero workouts, and everybody's a hero. Rich Froning's my hero, the hero. And I was like, because they asked me, and I'm like, fuck, man, don't have heroes. All you're doing is disappointed. Look at, if anything, the superhero movies have taught us was that our superheroes are human, and that they make mistakes. And regardless of how much we put them up on a pedestal, we're constantly disappointed. If you don't have heroes, then you know what? Then, you become your own fucking superhero. Build yourself into your own version of your superhero. And so the Eat the Week was really just this idea that like, if the opposite of light is dark, if the opposite of strength is weak, then you know what? We're going to devour weakness, and we're going to absolutely decimate this thing. and that the Occupy strength was about people meeting weakness, devouring weakness, and eating the weak.
Yeah, and it was a genuine experience. Like it was a strength experience, which working in the CrossFit community at the time, there wasn't a lot of those. It was more of the fitness work capacity events, and it was all about 1RMs and into a heavy, hard fast. And what Callie and I were able to do at the gym is turn it into a team event, because we were both team athletes and we created a team. Even though it was an individual competition, we rocked and rolled with 30 deep, and turned it into a genuine experience that represented the Eat the Week well, whether we realized it or not.
Yep.
And now I feel like the Don't Have Heroes almost evolved into this Eat the Week.
Yeah, it did.
So rather than looking around,
now
we can look within.
People got super butthurt off the Don't Have Heroes, because at the time,
Interesting.
everybody was talking about hero wads. Like, oh, these hero wads, and CrossFit was putting up their CrossFit heroes. And we had, I think it's great that, the hardest CrossFit workout in history is Calcio, which was not a CrossFit workout, it was a CrossFit football workout. And for an individual that passed away during Vietnam, when we were, people were asking for CrossFit football hero workouts. I mean, well, we got like Pat Tillman. I mean, there wasn't that many. But the idea of like, be your own superhero. Tony Blowers, be your own bodyguard. Stop waiting for somebody to come and save you, right? Stop waiting for heroes to, motivate you to be what you need to be. If you, and then I think about that time, we did a seminar at a gym that when we walked in, painted on the wall, was the home of the Triple Murph. And this guy had like coined it that like his fucking sword in the ground,
Excuse me.
was the Triple Murph. That they saw Murph and then they tripled it, and this was their marker. Like, this was their true testament to having heroes. And I think I was like, fuck, man, don't have heroes. If it involves a Triple Murph, don't have heroes. And it was in Chicago.
It was in Chicago.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the home of the Triple Murph. So there was a lot of things at play. I mean, the conversation with Jim Wendler, like, because he asked me like, hey, like, who did you look up to when you were a kid? And I was like, my dad, my brothers. I didn't really know any football players, wasn't a big football fan. Since getting to meet, players that I thought were good, it was never like, oh, I idolized this person, I was heroic of this person. I think when people come to meet their heroes, I think they're always severely disappointed.
Yeah, I'm not even going to look this gym up anymore.
Probably doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah.
After everybody died with Rhabdo. So the Don't Have Heroes thing was kind of a play on the hero workouts from CrossFit. No disrespect in any way to the individuals that passed away and have since been immortalized. But it became this like weird thing where they had these girl workouts and hero workouts and this, and it just felt really just, I don't know, hollow. And I got tired of just listening to it. And I didn't have heroes growing up. I mean, my heroes were my family, my brothers, the people that were tangible. It wasn't as if I was watching NFL Sunday and this guy's my hero. And it just felt like at the pinnacle of CrossFit there was a lot of hero worship. And I was like, my deal was like, man, one, I'm not your hero. Two, I've always said I was a pretty good athlete, pretty good football player that had enough wherewithal to know what I was doing to be able to tell and work with other people to help them on their journey. I never officially crossed the threshold into coach. Because I never viewed that as my deal. I always think that some of the best teachers are athletes that are still competitive and still can do some shit that you can effectively go in and work with. So pretty interesting. I took Jamie up to Jiu Jitsu yesterday, and the place that she's training at, Six Blades, Shandi Ribeiro, who's the main dude there, he just fought in that ADCC. And at 41 years old, he just retired from, like 11-time world champion. I mean, an incredible pedigree. And we watched it, and as we were talking about it, he got beat on points in the first round by a dude that was super quick. And he's like, I'm retired now. I'm no longer an athlete. And I didn't have the time to tell him, being like, fucking, you're always an athlete. And if anything, my first thing to him is when he said that, I was like, man, you should come train with us. Because I have a feeling that if you came and trained and lifted weights with us, you could go back and be competitive. Because I'll tell you, I don't give a shit if it's Gordon Ryan or whoever's winning this shit. They're not using the training that we know. if we could take a little bit of the power athlete stuff that we're doing in terms of we know in terms of developing, strength, muscle, speed, mix it with what his training is. I'm like, dude, we could give you an element where you could go out and fucking continue to fuck these dudes up. And I just don't think they have access to it. But I think like a guy like Gordon Ryan does. I think he's being pretty progressive in his training. And so my next conversation is like, hey man, when are you going to show up? Because I guarantee in 6, 7, 8 weeks, maybe 3 months of training, if you came consistently, I have a feeling you could go back and you would try to be like, I can still go do this. And, the one thing which is cool is he actually said, hey, you know what, I'm walking away from this. Whereas in the NFL, you don't ever get that decision. Somebody else decides when your athletic life ends and begins. And then once it ends and you're no longer invited to go play in the NFL, there really is no other place for you to go. It's not like, he obviously competes at this high level, but still gets to show up to the dojo, show up to Jiu Jitsu, roll and work with people, and you still get to live and breathe it, unless you decide to go be a coach. But for me, standing on that side with the whistle, not actively doing it, is almost worse than not doing it at all. So finding other ways to help athletes, I think, is the way that I've ported my stuff. And to bring it back, I mean, when we've thought about this mantra, and what's wild too, you're going to love this. So when I left the weight room, went in listening to Eat the Rich, and came out with Eat the Week, first thing I did, which I do for everything that we're going to do, is I do a Google search. And then I do a trademark search. And I look to see it. And at that point in 2012, not a single person had used the term Eat the Week in any form of commerce. There was no trademarking. There was nothing associated with it. Now, obviously, social media hadn't grown, in terms of Instagram, and, Facebook obviously was still relatively new. Twitter had kind of just come on the scene. The hashtag didn't exist. So we started using it in commerce, started making shirts with Eat the Week. Ended up, after using it in commerce for number of years, finally going back and trademarking it and then getting the trademark deal. And the amount of people that have fucking latched onto my Eat the Week, that have tried to make shirts and fucking branded it and tried to make merchandise, is fucking just embarrassing. And they usually get cease and desist. A bunch of professional wrestlers try to get onto it, but fucking they just hit them with a cease and desist and they get butthurt. But at the end of the day, it's like, hey man, you can't say you created this because we've been using it for so long. I mean, we're using it in commerce and shirts. It's been a hashtag in all of our fucking merch and all of our stuff for years, and it's a reason we own it. And at the end of the day, I can tell you exactly what the origin is. We were doing Occupy Strength. The opposite of strength is weak. Strong and weak. We were occupying it. We were going to devour weakness. Eat the weak. Very simple, based off of Lemmy's Eat the Rich.
Yeah, and there's so much depth to it, and I love the full combination of the mantra that is within it. And I want to go back to something you said as an athlete, working with other athletes to remain competitive, and that's the beauty of connecting with those, is they are going to push you, as you mentioned, bringing him in to come train with us and have that opportunity where you see where his limitations and weaknesses are, and he sees where yours are for the skill of jiu-jitsu.
Well, I mean, for those guys, the ability to move through space is really fascinating to me. I like to go and watch, and I think it's really interesting in terms of like different planes of motion and movement. My daughter, who's relatively new, and it's still pretty decent, just because she has such a good athletic background in terms of gymnastics, playing sports, swimming. So I mean, she's not like, she was good at backstroke, and she's like, in the car, I asked her, I was like, how, when you were doing those moves and you were on your back, how'd you feel? She's like, I feel pretty good. Like, I'm used to doing backstroke. So it was interesting to see her making the connections. And the one thing that when I asked her, I'm like, where, do you feel that when you lock up with these other kids or you're moving with them, do you feel like you're weak or strong? And she's like, well, I feel strong, but I also wonder if because my limbs are long, I feel pretty strong. And I was like, interesting. Like, you have leverage? And she's like, well, I can keep them away from me. And as long as my arms are kind of straight or my legs are straight, I'm pretty good. So, I mean, but there's like an interesting training thing. The one thing I'm super excited about is Logan Paulson's strength engine just showed up.
Yeah. What I want to stay with it.
But like involving that too in terms of the movement stuff, which we're going to play a bunch with that. I'm super excited to get that rock and roll.
Yes. But then identifying weaknesses, but the mindset of devour weakness. So seeking out other training partners that can add value to your limitations, but having the willingness to devour it. Doubt and fear by seeking out other expertise in different fields, you are eliminating that fear. So finding people to not necessarily exploit your weaknesses, but give you the opportunity to improve them.
Well, I mean, like most people never know their lug nuts are loose until they take a curve. So I think a lot of times it's very easy to drive fast on a straight road, to use some fucking racing analogies. But invariably, you got to build something. You got to go out and test it. Like we just got done with that, the Wade's Army Blazer. I was going to go race it around last night, but we didn't have any taillights. So we got to put some taillights on it. But being able to stress test things that you create in the gym or within the shop or within the world is really the greatest application for all of this stuff. So being able to look at somebody in terms of an athlete and develop them, and then find different ways to test it. One of the greatest things that we've done, not only through CrossFit Football and Power Athlete, by being delivering training programs to hundreds of thousands of people around the globe, is the real world application of everything. If the only marker that I ever got back was I can see my abs or I'm carrying more muscle to be more jacked and be healthy, I think that's a life worth living. But at the end of the day, like that wasn't my training goal. My training goal was to get as big and strong and fast and athletic and explosive as I could so I could port that on the field to go out and eat the week or fucking just try to fucking murder people. And, I mean, this is another interesting thing. When you watch NFL Sunday and you're seeing these players out there and you listen to Aaron Rodgers and all these guys talk, like the philosophical aside, at the core of that deal, there are dudes on the ball, whether it be offensive, defensive linemen, that their entire focus isn't any of that. It's to put their hand in the dirt, to come off the ball as fast and as hard as they can and impose their will and try to fuck a dude up and then go back to the huddle and do it over and over again for 3 hours. That's all I wanted to do. I didn't care about, this or the social or any of those shit. I didn't care about any of that. I just wanted to basically get in my stance, put my foot in there and my foot and hand in the dirt and come off the ball and smash a dude and impose my will upon them. And whether or not that's a weakness within myself or the weakness within other people, the eat the weak mantra, and really just the words that we put associated with it. It's not a call for cannibalism. It's the idea of devouring weakness was really, the embodiment of a focus from, for many, many years of training for football, that there was, if you think about soft points in armor, right? If you're trying to put on body armor, you talk about soft points, we're effectively trying to create the best organism that you can, the most efficient one to go out and do the function. And that's what we did with football. Could I be big and strong, put my foot in the ground and go 100 miles an hour and be able to drive, full extension, get through an individual, use compensatory acceleration to drive my hands and my head through them and basically drive them off the ball or do whatever, stone them on a pass pro. So all of those things had to happen in real time, but all of that time, everything was crafted in the off season with a constant state of work. Mm-hmm. And there was no room for doubt. That's always an interesting thing too. And I played with a ton of dudes that had doubt in their mind, had doubt in their heart running out there, there's always a little bit of imposter syndrome for everybody. But at the end of the day, like that imposter syndrome doesn't manifest on game day in such a way like I can't do it. The imposter syndrome manifests in the off season where somebody's working harder than me and I have to try to meet the demand of or really the standard that I've placed for myself.
Yeah. I was listening to a sports psychologist and essentially describing different types of athletes to look out for. And it was the person that has the doubts that's speaking to the worry building up during the off season. So they're focusing so much on the games, so far away from game day.
They've lost before they ever get there.
So this is a little different. So then this is where the coach comes in, is to focus on that and find out where it is. If it's within movement training, then reassuring that they're putting in the work. So the farther they worry about game day, the better, because we have this opportunity. The person with the false bravado, I'm doing enough, I show up the false confidence, but then all of a sudden it hits them on game day. So if they're during training, and look out for this, they have this false bravado and like, oh yeah, coach, I got it.
So in my typical philosophy state, I coined the term, in the absence of true leadership, false prophets appear. And that came from playing for the Eagles. I realized that if you did not have stable leaders, the type of people that said, hey, everybody come up, we're going to strap up our fucking helmets, we're going to run out there and we're going to fuck these dudes up. Anything less is unacceptable. What happened was if you didn't have those strong leaders, all of a sudden you started getting false prophets, where all of a sudden people started yelling and screaming and making all these profits, and the dude that fucking shows up last or shows up late, that doesn't do what he's supposed to do, that shows up overweight, all of a sudden wants to like take a hold and like break the team down and give a fucking inspirational speech, which there's nothing worse than a guy who doesn't train, doesn't fucking come in on weight, who doesn't bust his ass in practice and who's lazy as fuck on game day, showing up trying to give motivational speeches. Nothing will deflate a room faster than somebody that doesn't have, like, I mean, shit, dude, like you, in an NFL team, salary is obviously kind of important, right? Because like the leadership is placing their importance on an individual with it. But at the end of the day, man, I don't give a fuck what people pay. You know, guy could be making a minimum, dude could be making $250 million. If the dude that is making the minimum busts his ass, runs fast, hustles, is on time, is early, does everything he can, and shows himself to be the type of player you want around because he goes hard all the time, doesn't, you know, like the dude that gels up, that's the guy that you want, you know, the guy that, you know, like the quiet leader, the dude that just leads by example, that all of a sudden doesn't say a lot of shit, but on game day fucking snatches it up and puts his hand up and is like, we're going to fucking get out there and get this going. That's what you're looking for. And like, I've always been a fan of people that lead from the front. I've always never asked anybody to do anything that I wouldn't do myself. Like I would never tell my kids or anybody around me, hey, I want you to go do this when I wouldn't go do it. I mean, shit, dude. Like, I mean, just think about the collective. Hey, Tex, we need to get this done. Shit, you see me cleaning the same way. You know, we still do, you know, like we had a bunch of trash. I mean, a bunch of shit we had to get rid of, clean the ranch up. I mean, shit, dude. I mean, my wife was out there. I was out there. You know, my kids were out there a little bit. But I mean, at the forefront, like it's really hard.
We're getting our hands dirty at the dump.
Of course. And you have to. Like I firmly believe that you can't ask somebody to do something that you're not willing to do yourself. And I think that's a little bit with football, where, you know, you get a lot of coaches that maybe never played the game or never really worked out, whatever, screaming at people. I always like the coaches that fucking played the game. You know, the Ron Riveras, you know, those type of individuals. I mean, I had a coach named Dave Zawatson who played for the Bears, played at Cal. He was our graduate assistant, was such an impactful dude for me because he played the game and gave me a ton of feedback. I mean, his whole thing about punching with the thumb up so you don't get hyperextended elbows came from him. And what he did is he went like this. He had 2 huge scars on his elbows from guys that punched this way, hyperextended, and that got him out of the NFL. And he's like, I'm going to teach you to punch with thumbs up so you're not going to get hyperextend your elbows. And I learned that from him. So, I mean, those type of individuals, Jeff Gonzalez talked about when he was a young SEAL, they had all these like old Vietnam vets that were their instructors. And these guys were tough as nails. And the stories they told, he goes, you know, we revered these guys because not of what they said, but because of the ethos that they created. So in the absence of false leadership, false prophets appear. And I think whether it be a team, a family, a company, whatever it is, you have to lead from the front and you have to be the standard at which things are measured.
Yeah. And the key word with that is devour. So it's devour weakness, doubt, fear, and feeble excuses. Consume them before they consume you. And you've been on a number of teams throughout your career, and professional and business, and I have collegiate teams and professional teams and working teams, and working under head coaches for different strength teams. But then the cancer, the one negative, the person that doesn't buy in, and that starts to erode and consume, or the person that is consumed by this weakness, it then negatively affects the stronghold and people around them.
Yeah, I mean, if things aren't going well, and you watch this, I mean, you saw the Chiefs deal where Bieniemy and Patrick Mahomes, who I don't know Pat, but I know Eric Bieniemy. I think that I played with him. He was our running back when I was a rookie in Kansas City, in Philadelphia. To the point where I came in the huddle and I was like, holy shit, Eric Bieniemy, Colorado. I mean, I remember seeing him play.
Is that your hero?
No, but I remember seeing him play because that was like national championship stuff. I mean, we were always watching football at the time. So, I mean, it was neat to like.
Well, Colorado was something back then, right?
Oh, yeah.
Colorado, Nebraska was a big deal.
Dude,
Big 12.
Deal. And, I'd gotten recruited by Colorado and Nebraska. So to watch that and then all of a sudden like see those national championships, those big games, and then to all of a sudden have my like welcome to the NFL moment as I'm in the huddle with Eric Bieniemy was pretty neat. So I know him. I don't know him as a coach. But I see them John back and forth. And then I don't know if you saw Andy Reid's deal where it's like, hey, like this, and Andy is real good. He's got big, broad shoulders. And he's always been the first one to be like, hey, this is my team. Everything begins and ends with me. And if this is wrong, I'm going to get it right, which is what a coach does. The job of the head coach is to be the focal point. Like, this is my team. If there's a problem, I'm going to make a change. What I hate is when head coaches start pointing fingers at people. The first person they got to point to is themselves, right? Like, there's nothing like getting thrown under the bus in the media. And the way that the coaches would usually do it, which is one of my favorites. I was laughing about this because I was listening to the Joe Rogan, Aaron Rodgers podcast, driving up to take Jimmy to Jiu Jitsu yesterday. And Aaron Rodgers was kind of going through his experience with the media and all that. And I laughed. And what coaches usually do, and you're going to love this, if Andy Reid gets up there and he says, oh, this begins and ends with me. Then what he does is he goes and he privately meets with the different, media organizations or the sports writers, and he tells them things. And then those individuals walk down to your office, or I'm sorry, down to your locker, and then they'll interview you, and they'll come over and they'll say things like, word going around the facility is that, you're missing a lot of blocks, or you're not playing as hard, or you're doing this. So instead of them coming out, and they won't call you out in the media, but they'll call you out privately to those individuals who will go and then try to get you to say something of dissension. And that information comes right from the fucking team or somebody in the front office.
Well, I'm sure a lot of players out there fall for it.
Oh, they do. When I was playing for the Eagles, I was at my locker, and Jermaine Mayberry and I had lockers next to each other. And Jermaine was on one side. So we were playing, he was guard and I was guard. And then Runyon was on the other side. And one of the sports writers said, do you have any concerns as well as the tackles are playing with your ability to run the ball? And I was there, and Jermaine and I turned, and we were like, as well as the tackles are playing, are you saying that the centers and the guards aren't playing well? And then the sports writer was like, word going around the facility is that you guys aren't pulling your weight in the run game.
Wow.
And that was one of the first times I had experienced it, because I remember I went in and talked to our trainer, who was guy Rick Burkholder, who's a legendary trainer, great dude, played him for the Eagles, and then he's still with Andy at the Chiefs. Incredible guy. Trainer of the year. He's a legit dude. And Burkholder kind of like shrugged his shoulders, and he's like, man, when you hear things like that just, those dudes don't make that shit up. You have to know that either somebody's motivating you or somebody's fucking loose lip sync ships type of a deal. And that was interesting for me, because I called the dude out. I'm like, what are you fucking saying? Because at the end of the day, we're fucking running the shit out of the ball, and you think that we're running it off of the tackles, you're fucking crazy. So it was just interesting that came in that way. And the NFL's shady as fuck. It's always been that way, because it's just the nature of it, because you have these fucking sports writers who have never done shit in their lives, but yet represent the fat guy sitting on the couch. I always appreciate Jason Whitlock, but Jason Whitlock is, now his whole platform is this, and, calling all this stuff out. He's unmarried, no kids, and yet he's talking about family all the time. He's over there writing negative shit, but yet can't run across the fucking street. It's for me, it's always been a little disingenuous, and I like Jason. We connected on many levels, but he was real poison pen and would fucking rat fuck the hell out of people. And I don't know. I've never been a huge fan of sports writers, and I've always been real nervous of fans that like to just cast fucking shade at all times. And I think before social media, they were just fans that were mad at their home, probably yelling around the cooler. But now everybody has a fucking platform with social media.
What's also interesting is you've expressed that at different coaching staffs, where strength coach Hurd was asked to make the play calls for the defense because of some just shady shit going on within the coaching staffs.
Yeah.
That's an interesting...
Yeah, I mean, anytime you get organizations that are this big, where you have a whole lot of different personalities and this much money's involved. So you have these owners, right? I've always told you the story about Tom Modrak, who since passed his way, God rest his soul, who was the GM at the Eagles that drafted me. He said, never forget, football's a violent game played by violent individuals that get paid a lot of money to do violence on behalf of old rich white men. So you have these extremely rich owners who, hold themselves to a certain standard, usually captains of industry, very successful in everything they've done. The Arthur Blanks, Jeffrey Lurie's, these people, all big money people. And now they're found a new way to compete by, I'm going to put my best players against your best players. We have a salary cap. We build this business. Now let's go out and see who wins this motherfucker. And they have egos. Robert Kraft. Shit. One of my favorite Robert Kraft ones, and I've told you guys the story. I'm sitting there after practice, just in the facility, dining hall, just sitting there watching TV, and there was a couple young dudes, and I was just kind of hanging out. I think I was reading, and he walks in and kind of like looks around and goes over and starts turning all the TVs off. And one of the young guys was over there at the fruit, where the fruit was at the buffet. And Kraft walks over and is like, "Oh, are they all out of blueberries?" And the kid had like a big bowl of blueberries. He'd obviously taken them all. And he's like, yeah, they're out of blueberries. Kraft just takes the bowl out of his hand and walks out with it. And the dude walks over to me. He's like, "Man, the owner just took my blueberries." I'm like, "Well, technically they're his blueberries." Yeah. But he walked in. He looked around. There was no big time players in there. And I'm just sitting there reading, and a couple young dudes, he turned those TVs off. I just, you don't think that the whole Brady Deflategate and all the other shit that happened to Kraft was in response to the owners being pissed off about them winning the games as much as, as well as the Patriots were doing for all those years?
Well, I also remember the stats from said Deflate game, and it was like 4 rushing touchdowns. I don't think they had a passing touchdown. Yeah.
So, they're and at the end of the day, if you think that the PSI of the ball has anything to affect the outcome, I'd be pretty surprised on that one. There's other things that have a greater outcome than the PSI of a ball. But to take it back, I think, strength is where you find it. I think weakness is where you look for it. And I think it's real easy to point out. It's really become our culture where everybody's on the lookout to try to point something out to take emphasis off themselves. We've seen it all the time. Even within our own company and stuff, where it's real easy just to point a finger instead of saying, "You know what, you're right. I didn't do this well. I need to do better. What is asked of me?" And I always go back to something we learned from the 18th Airborne Corps meeting with General LaCamera. As we were in those meetings, they always left with what was the commander's intent. And Dave Spanton and I talk about this. What's the commander's intent? Here's what success looks like. Here's the commander's intent. This is what he wants. And I think for individuals, strong body, strong mind, being able to, find your path, and at the end of the day, live a life that you feel is one that's worthy of, you being here.
Training does go a long way. It's this opportunity that's for you to be honest with yourself. You did the work. If you chose to hit snooze and sleep in.
But it takes it a step further.
Building that up.
Yeah, the training, and I know I'm jumping the gun on this. The training has always been a vehicle to get you where you're going. I go back to my buddy Bundy saying, "Remember, Johnny, the party's on the road." So, there's fun in the training because the training is the vehicle. The training is getting us to the end goal. But we had a conversation with Antonio earlier today. We were talking about a little bit about, if, something prepares yourself or this, you have to be the master of your own ship. You have to decide your own destiny. Something that, obviously my son, we've talked about, has type 1 diabetes. And we were reading some research about outcomes in this, and it's fucking depressing, seeing these kids, at a young age, they get this, they kind of rebel in this, and they were kind of going through this case study. And, it's depressing to read. And what I said to my wife is the only thing we can do for our kids is arm them for their journey and prepare them for their journey. And like I talked about when my dad passed away, the job of the father is to prepare the son or the child for the day that the father's not there to guide them. we have to take them on this journey. We have to give them the best opportunity, arm them as much as we can, and then set them out into the world and hope that we did a good job and support them any way we can. Because we can't live their lives, much like with the training programs. For all you guys, I mean, I've always joked, very truthfully, that, you and Callie and, Luke and all these guys all came to me at an interesting point where you guys were fairly young. And there was hopefully I mentored you guys in a good direction, that you went out into the world, not fucking angry and bitter at me, but more like, hey, I had a good opportunity to learn something, and now I'm on a good path. And to see you guys successful is really incredible for me. But same with my kids. Have I prepared them? Have I given them everything that I can so that they have the skills to be able to go out in this world and be successful? And, I think this world's hard enough without having a bunch of parents fuck you up. But everything, I always want my kids to know that I support them and that I've armed them. But at the end of the day, I can't fight the wars for them. I can't fight the battles. They have to do that themselves. And I think part of what we run into in this time is that parents feel that, and this is the helicopter parenting, this is the
lawnmower parent.
Yeah, lawnmower parent. Yeah, we're just going to fucking buzzsaw everything. But I mean, this is Angela Duckworth's grit. This is a coddling of the American mind. I mean, we've had these people on the podcast. We've talked at this. We've read these books that the helicopter parent, where I'm going to fucking drop in like a nuclear bomb and try to solve all your problems because, that's how I do. And I mean, that is invariably disarming your children. And in an instance, in the absence of true leadership, false prophets appear. I mean, it's the world of Karens. My daughter Jamie loves watching these Karen videos on YouTube. And you know what? It's people that have grafted onto the emotion and can't fucking be rational. And I think all you can do is, one, you can be the model which you weigh yourself against, which is always really fascinating. I was thinking a little bit about how do I put this? We had I was thinking a little bit about the Steve Weatherford, where he's doing an incredible deal in influencing people by showing like, hey, this is who I was in this, and trying to show a better version of himself. And I think it's great. I just think that not everybody gets to that realization. So I think you got to, try to live a life that you're proud of. And, we were talking on with Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. There was that movie I talked about, Defending Your Life, from the 80s, where at some point, you go to purgatory and you get a defense attorney and a prosecutor, and they actually, did you live with passion? Did you live without fear? And the people that were fearful have to go back and redo it. The people that lived without fear, that went 100 miles an hour and didn't worry about stuff, but were successful, that didn't allow their life to be driven by fear, end up going on to heaven. So I know we've covered a bunch of ground here, but that Eat the Week has really been the embodiment of all of this. The idea of, every day in the off season, getting up and training and trying to sharpen the blade so that I was most efficient to go into training camp and get a job and go in and play and be a player that was remembered not for a whole bunch of bullshit, but somebody that was legitimately earned people's respect by playing the game the way it should have been played.
In sport and the game, and often your careers, there are people like a coach that are pushing your limits, or where you believe your limits are, and presenting an opportunity for you to level up. And a lot of athletes out there, a lot of people in their professional careers, they put their head down, or they play the blame game on the coach hates me, or my boss hates me. So this is an opportunity for internalize, devour the weakness. Why is this occurring? And grow from it.
It's really easy to say, hey, so-and-so's being mean to me, or, this person doesn't like me, or this person's out to get me. I mean, we've seen it, to the point where we've seen people, when you call them on it, hey, how come this didn't get done this? Instantly, all they can do is give you a laundry list of excuses that take the blame off of them, instead of being like, yeah, I need to figure this shit out. Yeah, there's some issues here, but I'm a competent individual and I can solve this problem. Don't worry about it. I got you covered. That is what I want to hear from people. And when I start hearing this and this and this, I just fucking tune out. And I'm like, dude,
feeble excuses.
And it's real easy to do that. And I think people, It just, like you said, dude, the body language right there, you just go, you're like, don't be the person that I know you to be. Be something better. Strive to it. I mean, taking responsibility for things is really, and I'll go back to classic Andy Stumpf. The difference between a man and a boy: a man does what he has to, a boy does what he wants to. And sometimes a man has to take responsibility if something's not going right to get it right. Andy Reid, same thing. Obviously he sees his infighting between Bieniemy and Mahomes. I mean, what's fascinating on that one, just to kind of circle back, is Bieniemy has been on the list for a head coaching job for about 3 or 4 seasons and hasn't effectively landed a coaching job. You can talk about, the fact if he was, they don't want to hire more black coaches. I mean, whatever it looks like. But if you've been on that head list for a long time and you haven't been able to kind of get the nod, and other people that weren't nearly as much pedigree as you have are getting catapulted to these jobs, you got to start to look at the individual and say, like what's he doing in his interviews? How is he not convincing these people that, he obviously has the chops, played the game, coached the game, has been on one of the, most prolific staffs, Super Bowl. He should be everybody's first hire. Why isn't he? And maybe what we're seeing with some of the Mahomes battle, that back and forth, isn't necessarily that, is this anger on his part where, I'm getting overshadowed, I'm not getting these opportunities, and this kid isn't listening to me. Or, with a guy like Mahomes, I'm sure there's a ton of shit that's going on. I can look, and I played in Andy's offense. Mahomes is an extremely dynamic player. I'm sure they give him a lot of leeway to go either way. Like, they call a play. I don't know what his checks look like or whatnot, but you see him make a ton of stuff out of broken plays, and he moves. And I don't know if that's because of he's not following his reads or what that looks like, but invariably, he's probably not the type of cat you want to micromanage. You probably just like, hey, we're going to call the play, and then at the end of the day, you let playmakers be playmakers, and Andy's real good about that. So I don't know, but it's just an interesting thing. But then the other issue is the NFL loves to create drama. They have to. Aaron Rodgers made an incredible point where he's like, every season, it's the greatest suspense novel in the history of the world, and it's written in real time. And we don't know who's going to be the heroes, who's going to be the protagonist and the antagonist. We don't know who's going to be the, we don't know where the final battle is going to be. And he went through all this stuff, and he's like, it's the greatest novel, and it gets written every year. And you have these individuals who have to stoke the fire to create bad guys and good guys and heroes in this. And he's like, I was the bad guy. And they fucking stoked the fire on me based upon the, fact that he said, hey, I'm immunized, and nobody took him for granted. Even though the team knew he wasn't vaccinated, and then all of a sudden you're hurting your players, you're putting people in danger, you're a fucking piece of shit. And, he had already had COVID. It was really interesting to hear.
Great analogy.
Yeah. So, yeah, incredible analogy. And as soon as he said it, like, my head popped. I was like, man, that's an incredible one.
Could you now say that our listeners out there could be the hero to their own story?
I think everybody has the potential to be the hero of their own story. But then you go back to the Jim Wendler, don't have heroes. Is that something where, don't be the hero? Yeah, everybody has. We're all writing our own graphic novel. And it goes back to my other favorite one, is that you're the villain in somebody else's story.
Just one?
Well, no, but think about that. Somewhere, you can think about this. You are somebody's villain in their story. And you know what? I'm fine to be your villain if you need me to be your villain. But at the end of the day, I just want people to hold themselves to a good standard. There should be, so whenever I hear parents, and I get asked this question more than not, where parents would be like, oh, knowing what you know now, would you let your kids play football? If you could go back in time, would you play football? And I always tell them, yes. Everything good that I learned in this world, I learned from playing football, and I learned from my parents and my mom and dad and my brothers. If you remove one of those, I learned about hard work. I learned about teamwork. I learned about showing up on time, going 100 miles an hour, giving effort, earning your paycheck, being an individual that can be counted upon to deliver, like a game plan. Like, we're going to sit up, we're going to lay the game plan, and here's my piece, and I'm going to go do it. Consistency, diet, training. All the other stuff that you have to do. And at the end of the day, don't be a piece of shit. I played with a lot of dudes that were pieces of shit. I was, oh fuck. You see what's happened with Brett Favre?
More texts? No idea.
No. So Brett Favre just, you didn't see this? So there was a welfare, they gave $70 million for like welfare in Mississippi. And the people that were in charge of the nonprofit, he was negotiating them to funnel money from the nonprofit to build a new volleyball stadium at Ole Miss for like $5.1 million. And then there was also $1.2 million that he was paid for speaking engagements that he never did. So the guy who was in charge of the funding, whatever, just took a plea deal with the feds. And the only time people take a plea deal like that is if you're in a situation where you have no out and there's a bigger fish to fry. So Brett Favre is in a bad situation in the fact that, and he claims to not know, but yet they have text messages with him and the individual where he's like, is there any way this can get traced back to me? And like a little bit weird admissions of guilt. So he's in a bad situation. I don't necessarily think that, hopefully there's nothing nefarious, wanting to get a new stadium built for Ole Miss. I just don't know if, using welfare funds.
Well, was it Ole Miss or Southern Miss? Because he went to Southern Miss.
Oh, sorry, wherever his daughter goes to school.
So then I don't know that. But yeah. He went to Southern.
So wherever his daughter plays volleyball, they were trying to get a new volleyball facility built for like $5.1 million, which seems really cheap in the grand scheme of things.
I'll look it up later.
I mean, Brett was an incredible player, but even at the end of his career with that hot Jen chick, remember where he was sending dick pics? At a different time in this world, the problem is he was in his 40s and you're, over there sending dong pics to a 21-year-old intern. It's probably not a good play in this day and age with social media. And I mean, look at your guy, Adam Levine.
My guy.
Right? Married to a Victoria's Secret model. She's pregnant with number 3 and you're out there doing this. I get that he's a rock star and I get it's acceptable.
My head coach freshman year of college, and I'll never forget this, he often, and this is how stupid we are, he would stop us, and if we did something bad, he'd be like, let's play a little game. Good idea, bad idea. And he, in front of the whole team, so if you got caught drinking in the dorms, anything, let's play a little game. Good idea, bad idea. And so that, a heavy lift of shame for you. But then, I mean, most of the other guys were there with you. So it was, but that little game always stuck with me.
Well, but I think in today's day and age, a lot of things that might have just been like hearsay now with like social media, with text messaging and like emails and this, I mean, you got Adam Levine hitting chicks up on DMs on Instagram, being like, your body's so insane and this, and then like basically like telling the chick that he's gonna
my picture that I sent him.
He's gonna name his third child after the girl. So like you're basically gonna ask your wife to pick the name of the chick who's like, you're seeing on the side piece. Like it just feels so fucking dumb. And is it because they don't care, they don't get caught? Like at so here's an interesting kind of point of view for this. Like whether or not you are married with kids, whatever, if you believe in the covenant of marriage, death do us part, whatnot. But at the end of the day, like you have these little humans. I got twin daughters, I got a son. Forever they will know that this will be front public and center for him and his kids that daddy did something bad to mommy. And you know what? Like forever, he's going to grow up, and regardless of how he creates those bonds or repairs things or whatever, those kids are going to forever know that he embarrassed the fuck out of their mom, embarrassed the fuck out of himself and his family, and that will always track them. And that shit's important to me. Talk about legacy and name and that. I mean, you can say whatever you want, but at the end of the day, I think those little individuals that you're in charge from, that we talked about, arming them with the skills so that they can go on into this world and be successful and go that. I think it's a hard world. And unfortunately, with the internet and the way things are, people have long memories. And that's you can say what you want about a lot of people, but man, that's like my heart breaks not only for that dude, that one, he would feel like this, well, one, he had nobody around him and be like, first of all, you don't know that shit can be screen capped and these bitches are going to fucking out you, which seems stupid. I mean, like, and if he doesn't know that, he's a moron.
That's a bad idea.
Yeah, that's a bad idea. And the fact that you have, I mean, dude, your wife is probably one of the hotter chicks. I mean, you don't get to be a Victoria's Secret angel model without being probably like in that top, Giselle echelon. And now you're working on your third kid. I mean, that just feels like a dude who fucking doesn't know himself. And all you have to do is see him shirtless with his tattoos to know that guy doesn't know who the fuck he is. I'm like, I've never seen him. It's like he went and he got all those tattoos at once and they all look like garbage. So I'm gonna shit on his tattoos. But to me, that's a sad deal. And I feel terrible for that lady and I feel terrible for those kids. And I feel terrible that he's been embarrassed like this because it must be a terrible fucking home life. It's like Tom Brady, right? Wants to come back and play. He probably told his wife that he wasn't going to. Goes back on it. She's pissed off at him and he has to leave training camp, which at the end of the day, like NFL is important, but take care of your fucking family. You got a family, you got kids. And so he leaves and what happens? The fucking media lambastes him and he gets up there and he's like, man, I'm 45 years old. There's a lot of shit going on in my life. And, sometimes I got to go home and deal with this, which is, a situation at home. And to have the amount of people shit on him for that, not because...
Well, he went to The Masked Singer, John.
Oh, you think that's what he did?
100%.
I hope to God that it's The Masked Singer and he's just keeping the fucking deal. But the media was really hard on him. And it's like, man, this guy has laid his body and his life on the funeral pyre of football for over 2 decades. He's had 3 Hall of Fame careers. This motherfucker wants to take 11 days off to go home and deal with his wife and his family and make sure everything's fine. Fucking tell me where, I'll go pick him up and drive him there. And he doesn't owe these people fuck all. He doesn't owe these sports writers anything. He's already proven himself 1,000 times over. And then the fact that you have a bunch of fat fucking sports writers and a bunch of fans cast shadows, it's bullshit. It's not like, I would be surprised. I mean, what's the best thing? I'll tell you, the most humanizing thing I saw of Tom Brady was at his the Super Bowl boat thing where he got shit-faced and they had to carry him out. Dude's probably not a big drinker. He probably had like 3 shots and probably out in the sun, had a great time of his life. And probably the first humanizing thing, that guy's been absolute Teflon with his image for as long as he has. It was great. It was humanized him. And as I saw his boys carrying him out, I was like, as they should. And you know what? We should revere that dude. This is an interesting piece and something I reflected on recently. You get a chance to do this job and play in the NFL. It becomes your life. Your friends do it. You're around people. You're in this bubble. It's how you identify yourself. I got to do it for 10 years. The day that you don't get to do it anymore, it's really hard because for a lot of people, don't know who you are. I recently watched some with Tony Gonzalez where he's like, I was on vacation somewhere and I just started crying because it was over. That dude did it for 17 years, got to walk away with a job on the sports decks, Hall of Fame, the best to ever do the job for almost 2 decades. Mm-hmm. And he still battled with, what is my identity? Who am I? How do I know this? And that's a really interesting piece for me. I mean, my career ended long before I thought that it should have. I thought I had good football in me, and injury, whatnot, just fucking tackled it out of me. And it wasn't until a few years later I figured out why through, working with Dr. Bueller and Tom Incledon and the people we've worked with. And, that's the physical aspect, but also the mental, the emotional of like, what's my identity? Who am I? What's the weakness that comes up when I'm all by myself and I'm laying in bed and like, your mind's racing 100 miles an hour. Like, what are the demons that come and see you? What are the regrets? What are the things that you did? Like we were talking with Dr. Gabrielle, aka G Money. People don't regret the things they did. They regret the things they didn't do. So you're in there and you're like, did I do everything that I was supposed to? Did I live this thing as well as I should? Did the body of work that I did earn me the respect of those that I played with? Now, the Hall of Fame and all that other shit is like a publicity stunt. I mean, it's how people view you. But at the end of the day, did you earn the admiration and the respect of the people you worked with and the people that you worked against? And that to me is by far the greater mark. Believe me, I'll never get to the Hall of Fame, but there are players that I played with. I mean, we have Jason Dunn. We've had numerous guys on that were like, fuck, dude. That guy came, that guy brought it and did the job the way they were supposed to. And to me, that's a marker of success. Here's a situation where Tony, the best tight end ever played the game. I don't give a shit who you want to throw, Kelsey and all these other guys.
Tim Tebow.
As tight end. Yeah, Tony's great. And there was a situation, even in his retirement, with a huge job on the sports desk, Hall of Fame. I mean, everybody will remember his name forever. I mean, dude, we were in Ensenada, Mexico. This is hilarious. We were in Ensenada. We went down there for whatever fucking reason. I don't remember. We go into a bar. We're coming out. Nick, who's one of our friends, one of Tony's buddies from high school, gets thrown out of the bar and like starts getting kind of roughed up by the security. And all of a sudden we go over there and 4,000 Raiders fans all of a sudden realize that this is Tony Gonzalez and start fucking chanting fucking Tony, you know, I mean, and they're Chiefs fans, whatever. Like this whole thing got dissipated real quick when all of a sudden he had a fucking force of 4,000 Raiders fans that were Tony Gonzalez fans. And I mean, just the power within a split second when these people realized who he was. I mean, you would have like, it was frightening to see all of a sudden people come to his aid. You know, be bold, mighty forces come to your aid. We talked about for Almost Famous, but in a situation where that guy, who is, you know, one of the most intelligent, kindest, gentlest dudes I've ever met, and one of the greatest athletes, like didn't know who he was. And so you have a situation where Tom Brady, who's been in this fight, he's been at the head, you know, and I hate the term GOAT, but if anybody ever going to use one, it's fucking him. I mean, him and Jordan.
LL Cool J, but yeah.
Well, did you hear Jordan when they called him the GOAT? He said, "Don't call me that. The only way I'd be the GOAT is if I got a chance to play against Wilt Chamberlain and the best ever, and I didn't get a chance. So if I didn't play against him, how do I know I was the best? Don't call me that." But Brady, I mean, dude, for 2 decades has played at the highest level, more Super Bowls. I mean, has a argument to be the best to ever play the game. And there's a situation where, you know, hey, you have to take care of your family. Your wife wants you more involved in this. I'm going to step away. And then the finality of stepping away where no longer will he be the person that he's known himself to be for more than his adult life. I mean, think about it. He's been playing football for longer than he's been alive. I mean, since he's 14 years old, and now he's 45. So for 30 years of his life, he's been the guy taking the snap, living in this. I mean, I bet you he's like, I don't know who I am without this. I can't leave this yet. And then his wife was like, you know, I mean, like I can see this thing play out because in reality, this was my life. Like all of a sudden you're like, shit, who am I if I'm not this person? And then you have to go back to that, you know, devour that weakness piece, eat the weak, right? Mm-hmm. Who am I now? And that was an interesting thing. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a son, you know, and I always joke, you know, I'm my father's son. Like that's an easy, basic one. You got to go back, you know, as a Berkeley grad, you know, I you know, class myself as a Renaissance man, a rhetorician. I mean, all these things, you know, the fact that, you know, we came here to Texas and have built these things. When people come and you see this podcast room in this building, people are amazed, you know, by the things that we've created. And I think you start taking stock of not only the influence you have on other people, but the things that you're able to do within your life. I had an incredible opportunity where CrossFit reached out to me as I was still recovering from an injury about going out and teaching what I knew about performance and strength conditioning, you know, helping them develop their technology and how to train athletes. And then got to go out on the road and actually influence people in a positive way. I mean, it was almost a seamless transition. Like I got injured, had surgery, and then this started. And we've been doing this for 100 miles an hour for a long, you know, since this. I mean, to take me back and imagine me sitting as a new father, hiding a little bit at the gym just so I could get some work done because I had 2 babies at home. And, you know, we would get some help during the day so I could go to the gym and like, you know, not only manage the gym, but, you know, CrossFit football, all the stuff that we were doing, trying to come up with a tagline, you know, going into just, you know, bang some weights by myself, listening to Lemmy's Eat the Rich and realizing that eat the weak is what we've been trying to do for all these years. I'm forever grateful for the opportunity I had to play in the NFL and for every day that I did it. And I did have a sad realization that because it was so fucking cool, I never really allowed myself to like it. So there was always this thing where I was like, yeah, it's okay. It's just something I do. And I would downplay it. And I think because when something is that important to you, you're afraid that it'll be snatched from you. And if it is, and it's taken from you at any moment, that it will break your heart. And that piece, and people are like, well, what was it? It wasn't about the fans. It wasn't about the uniforms, the facility, or any of the other bullshit. It was the fact that I got to train with a singular purpose. And then I got to go out and test that every single Sunday against the best, biggest, brightest, biggest stars in the world in terms of physicality. And that was addictive for me. And I was afraid that like when that all of a sudden gets taken from you, how do you fill that need? You know, do you get up on TV and Timmy, Tony, Terry, Tommy, and you get to fucking yap about the shit you did fucking 40 years ago and talk about football? Didn't fucking excite me. I like this podcast because we get to connect with a whole bunch of interesting people, which, as you know, I'm in this perpetual learning stage. I'm constantly acquiring knowledge. And this podcast has been, even though I hated the fucking idea of doing a podcast.
Well, you went from being the hammer to building hammers.
Forging hammers.
Crafting
hammers. Yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting journey. I also had the wherewithal, and I forever am thankful for this, that I wasn't a painkiller guy, that I wasn't a drug guy, that I wasn't a big drinker. Even though, I mean, I would go out and have some drinks. I can't say that I didn't have drinks, but I wasn't an alcoholic. I wasn't a pillhead. I wasn't a habitual marijuana smoker, like that, or just a marijuana smoker in general. But like when all of a sudden, I think what happens is when it ends for the guys that are big into substances, that are using them as coping mechanisms, whether it be to chase pain or booze or, who knows, fucking strip club, porn, whatever the fuck their addiction is. All of a sudden, when the football goes away, that becomes the focus. That's the dopamine rush in this. And,
consumed.
That wasn't my deal.
Consumed by it.
Yeah. And what my rush was going out on the road, getting up and presenting CrossFit football and working with people and traveling and talking and building this fucking sea monkey experiment in real time. This idea that I had that you could
Space monkeys, John.
Space monkeys. That you could foster and develop athleticism if you understand the components of athleticism. And we still get excited and talk about it because it's fucking cool. That you can build hammers, you can craft athletes, that you can take a look at somebody who's the best in the world, put them through a series of training metrics and like understand weaknesses in this and where they're deficient and add some different pieces, and then effectively put them back into the system and then push them back out and see if they're better versions of themselves. And to me, that's always been like the experimental piece of this. And, I know people like to do it. My buddy George Bryant does it with, marketing and this. And you got Matt Vincent, who's traveling around the world on the FOMO deal, where he's just basically taking, epic naked pictures and building his OnlyFans. I'm kidding. But I keep telling Matt, I'm like, you need to start an OnlyFans. You probably crush it. But like that type of stuff, man, like people have to find their place in this world. And I think what happens to a lot of professional athletes is they can't walk away from the game. So they either kind of slide into the media, which to me feels extremely dirty. I mean, look at Heath Evans. I mean, he had a great job working for NFL. Sends a kind of semi-flirty text message to some chick who puts it out, and they fucking eviscerated him, and he lost that job. I mean, dude was fucking great. So the media side's shady as fuck. Do you get to be an announcer? Do you get to go to games? I mean, very few guys get a chance to do that. Sideline reporter. I mean, fucking Booger McFarland, terrible football player, even worse announcer, has a job. Anybody that knows, and then like I played against him. Those guys are very few and far between. What do? I mean, we had Logan Paulson on the podcast. I mean, he coaches people, using, that strength engine I'm excited to try. Look at what Nick Hardaway is doing. I love Nick. I'm so sad that Nick and I weren't friends when we were playing and that we didn't get a chance to connect. That, it's been since we've retired, we've connected, but I look at that dude as like a kindred spirit, and, he's, incredible family man, has, a great wife and kids, and invests a lot of time and work and wants to be the standard of which he's measuring his family against, has a ton of shitty tattoos, which I always appreciate too. But is, got in shape, isn't 400 pounds, posts a bunch of shirtless selfies like an underwear model. I mean, this has been this idea of like, and to bring it back, all of this is wrapped up in like that dark moment when I went in the gym, listened to Lemmy's Eat the Rich, which is about literally, if you listen to the lyrics of that, there's people that have more. Let's fucking eat those guys. And, that idea of like, what is the weakness when you close your eyes? Have you done the job that you were required to do? Is the body of work that you did allowed you to, enter the gates of Valhalla, to use that one? But did you do the job? And more importantly, like, what is the weakness when you come out the other side on this? Can you invariably build yourself into another version? Can you stand upon yourself and do something else brilliant? Is this the only thing you ever did? And if forever the only thing that I've ever did was stand on this side and play a game, and that's what people are going to know me forever? I don't think so. So the Eat the Week, trademark Power Athlete owned by myself and Power Athlete has been much more than just a fancy thing to put on t-shirts or what we have in terms of not a call for cannibalism, but about devouring that weakness, is because, there's a lot of darkness within things. And especially in that transition, and people will listen and people will be like, oh, you sound like a fucking prima donna. You have this great life and this, dude, it's just like everybody. I remember my brother, my brother's a criminal defense attorney. And I remember as I was at this transition, my brother's like, man, I can't imagine. I went to law school, cut all my teeth, did everything I had to do to be a criminal defense attorney. I can't imagine if somebody just knocked on the door and said, you can't do this anymore, go fuck off and do something else. He's like, it's my identity. It's who I am. It's what I've worked for my whole life. And now all of a sudden somebody else decides when you get a chance to do this and don't. He's like, I don't know if I could deal with that. And he's like, but unfortunately, you don't know how strong you are until you're forced to be strong. You have to figure it out. And just falling into a bottle of pills or a bottle of booze or, strip clubs, whatever the fuck you get addicted to, chasing a bunch of, Adam Levine, a bunch of women on Instagram because you feel somehow neglected at home, or maybe your wife isn't hot enough, or kids are taking away too much attention. And so you get shitty tattoos and you want to be the front man for a band, and that no longer suffices you. So I think it's,
I want to emphasize that training or putting yourself in this position. So we challenge people through our training programs.
And we challenge ourselves. What do we say every single day as we lead?
I'm going to challenge you to let me build on this point. So essentially, training is this opportunity. Following a nutrition protocol is not as easy as we make it out to be, but that's an opportunity to challenge yourself daily and resist the temptation of food. Training, resist the temptation of the snooze. And all of those are little reps presenting opportunity for you to make a proper decision. So when the temptation of the strip club or whatever the hell is pulling you away from your goals, family, career, anything, you now have thousands of reps of making the correct decision of eating the week to simply say no and be confident in your ability versus any FOMO out there, any BS. You've done the work. So that, I feel, Eat the Week embodies that. So utilizing training to get the opportunity and the reps to know who the fuck you are so you can take a stand for family, life, job, or the next thing that's ahead of you.
Yeah, I think we're entering an interesting time in that there's a bunch of people, like, a bunch of lost souls. I mean, people that are searching for meaning. I mean, the one thing that's really struck me with Jordan Peterson, where we were talking about, we got the chance to go see Jordan Peterson speak here in Austin on the first stop of his tour. I was both happy, amused, and I thought it was awesome the amount of guys that showed up in suits for what, and you know why? Even Jordan Peterson commented, a lot of great looking dudes out here in suits. I'm really proud of you guys for showing up. And a lot of those guys look to Jordan Peterson. And so what's wild for me is when, because I view him as just a really caring man, and the fact that you'll hear him demonized and people are like this and that, I'm like, I've never heard anything other than just trying to empower individuals. So that's whenever I hear somebody shit on Jordan Peterson, I'm like, ooh, I got to stay away from this person because I really enjoy listening to him talk. And we got a chance to go hear him talk. But like that idea of people searching for something, and I've said to you before, most people that go searching for something find something. This idea of like, asking people for these 12 rules, get up every morning, make your bed, stand up straight. I mean, these things, follow a training program, follow something, have a code, read, reflect. I mean, do whatever you want to do. You call it new age bullshit. But at the end of the day, I think it's really difficult to just trade within this currency, this world, if you don't know who you are. And I think we've run into a bunch of people that don't really know who they are. They're chameleons based off of whatever's cool or whatever they think allows them to give the impression that they're attached to something. Do these shoes, do these pants, does this bag, does this hat, does this associate me with a tribe instead of being like, this is who I am. I don't give a fuck. I don't need anything on my shirt. I don't need anything on my hat. Like, I stand on my own. This is who I am. The merits of what I've done have been allowed for me to be successful. So, I mean, I do forever appreciate people like Jordan Peterson, offering this. I mean, we were talking about Jocko's extreme ownership, that idea of like, testing yourself, owning your shit, like knowing who you are. And I think there's a lot of interesting thought leaders at this point in this world. And I think it's because there's so much noise that you need some really good information. And I think it's mainly because I think there's just been a lot of shitty fathers. I mean, how many people we met that was like, I didn't get what I needed to out of my dad, or my dad wasn't around, or this, and we kind of talk about those lost boats.
Well, yeah, say that, or say something negative. Towards them. So in any shape or form, that kind of either resentment for or acknowledgement. I mean, if they're acknowledging they didn't get what they needed, that's certainly a step forward rather than resentment.
Well, but did their dad not know who they are? That's another issue. I mean,
we don't know. There's an
infinite deal. But I think what we tried to do is create a brand that's based upon a set of principles and a methodology, and then invariably go out and live that and not be disingenuous. The one thing I've always, I have very well appreciated about like Rich Froning, for example, right? Like Family Man, right? Busts his ass, like not only continues to win the CrossFit Games, like shows up as like I did as an individual, do as a team. He's got his Buffalo Ranch. I mean, that dude like has done a ton of stuff and built upon it. And I don't know him personally, but like, just like from what I've seen, like seems like a pretty good dude. Christian set of ideals. I know he doesn't believe that in the paleo thing, because he doesn't believe they're longer than 6,000 years old. I don't know if he's changed on that recently, but like always, everybody I've ever met said, dude, nicest dude.
Well, I've drank beers with his dad at his home.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
I mean, give you shirt off his back. So, I mean, like, I think there is opportunity out there, but it just feels like there's a lot of rudderless boats. And I think if we can be a bastion for that, and I think that the way we provide this stuff is through the lens of training. The idea, I mean, what do we say every day we leave the office? See you tomorrow, 7 a.m.
7 a.m.
We might be a little early, might be a little late, but we see each other every morning.
Yes. And going back to the Bible and the iron sharpens iron, this is where we can sharpen one another, and it's good representation of teamwork. If you need it as an individual out there, Eat the Week can be yours.
Yep.
Not on a t-shirt.
Not on a t-shirt. or you'll get a cease and desist. As people have found out, and then they get mad, and I'm like, dude, you're just late to the party. Come up with your own shit. You got to have more deep reflection. But
if you want to put Eat the Week on your back from us, shop at powerathletehq.com. If you want to take ownership, start training, and find out who you are, powerathletehq.com/training. We got plenty of training program options specific towards your goals. Find out which training program is right for you. And that is another episode of Power Athlete Radio.
Bye.
Bye.